difficult. This is not a scenario where just being more optimistic, faster, better, smarter is going to be adequate. So, in the story that you tell yourself internally, instead of victor or victim, I want you to think about what's my loss and my struggle, and what's my hope and my courage. So, that's just something to kind of think about in what you see about yourself. And then that will allow you to tell a story to your employees. Yes, this is difficult. Yes, it's been uncertain. Oh, I can't believe it's been so long. And look what we have done. Another really, really practical suggestion I have with your staff is we love to celebrate wins. I've done that forever. We do that around the dinner table at home, with teams, with my clients. But during crisis, I always encourage people to celebrate learning and progress. Okay, because you're going to have wins, but then you have a setback. It's kind of, if you're doing the score by successes and losses during crisis, it can get a little depressing. But if you really celebrate your learning and your progress, that's empowering. Another thing, with the victim and the villain is sometimes how we cast ourselves in the great play. But when we look outside at what's around us, are we saying that's the source of wrong, all doing, and evil? It's easy to get sucked in that, especially in this current environment. But I can tell you, whenever we are demonizing and vilifying a person, a party, an economy, a system, we're actually more fearful and frustrated. And so it's just not helpful. We need to be clear eyed. We do need to name problems and how to improve them, but we need to be focusing on the vision moving forward versus the villain that we perceive got us here. Does that make sense? Great. And then I just want to end this piece about, we do have the power to tell a new story, to share more of our story. If we follow this metaphor, there's probably chapters in our life that were the victor's story. It was the hero's story. We may have chapters in our life that was just a great comedy or a great romance or a mystery. Just our lives are so rich. And so one of the powerful aspects of a leader is that they can tell an expanding story. And so one of the just great challenges as well as privileges in my life was how my own personal story really entered this space. So 15 years ago, I'm in graduate school, I'm studying crisis. How do you learn from success and failure? Then I become, a consultant. So I get to see businesses in different sectors and entrepreneurs up close, struggling and learning. And I was really about 5.5 years ago, kind of at the top of my game. I was actually on a first draft of my book. My business journey lead was going fabulously. Two beautiful children, a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. And in my conversation with Roy, when we were on the phone, we're talking about how do you come to this topic? You kind of can't come to this just like, oh, I can advise you because I have a PhD, or I can advise you because I've looked at best practices. That may, on the most superficial level, give you some credibility. But if anything, I hope you've heard during this conversation, through this talk, about the humanness of just being present. So halfway through my conversation with Roy, I can't remember the exact question, but I shared with him that 5 years ago, our 9-year-old son passed away very suddenly. He was in the middle of a hockey tournament. We're here in Minnesota. How this Kentucky girl became a hockey mom, that's another story. But as you can imagine, first of all, it's not helpful to compare tragedies. That's a rabbit hole that goes nowhere. But I think almost anyone would acknowledge that the loss of a child is something that is just against the nature of, how we believe life should unfold. There's a word for someone that's lost their parents. That's an orphan. There's a word for someone that's lost their spouse, a widow or widower. But there's really no word for someone that's lost their child other than a bereaved parent. So, you know, there's a very deep and rich and complex story about how our family came together and dealt with that grief and that trauma and that loss, which continues to obviously be a part of our family story and our family legacy. And I became most passionate about this topic when I was able, and this wasn't the first year or the first 2 years or even the first 3 years, but I can tell you that 5 years out, my passion around sharing with people that they can not only survive what they think is the worst, it is possible to thrive. And I do say that with some authority, as a grieving parent, as a business owner. And it's because other people around me have been compassionate, have allowed me to tell my story, have allowed me to be a great business person and someone who struggled. And the part that I think I want to just kind of share with you before we move on is I shut down my practice for about, 6 months. And then I love my work. And one of the things I realized very early on is anything that is good in your life before a tragedy. So, meaningful work, healthy relationships, a faith community, whatever those things in your life that you've invested in and cultivated, they will save your life through and after a tragedy. So, one of my messages of hope and encouragement is that you're sowing those seeds of the good things in your life. And my husband and I, my community, I just, it's been an embarrassment of riches how much love and support we've been surrounded by in our community. And that's what really shepherded us through those first couple years. But way back, 6 months after we lost Ben, I was going back to work, and I was really happy because work was still a place that I felt inspired. And in fact, I feel like I've done my best work since that tragedy. I'm more bold, I'm more compassionate. I don't get caught up in the little things. But the kind of the experience that really turned this for me is I was meeting with the CEO of my largest client, which is it's the largest privately held company in the world. So it would, be a Fortune 20 company. And I'd done a lot of work around the globe for this company, but I'd never met the CEO. And so, I'm bringing my A game. I'm wearing a suit and I'm like ready to go, and got there on time. He's a very formal person. We sat down, we covered business. And as I'm getting ready to leave, my suit jacket kind of comes up a little bit, and you can see I've got a tattoo here. Now, I got to tell you, I grew up, in an era in the South in the 70s where, tattoos were the gateway to drugs. I mean, if you told me I'm going to be in Minnesota, a hockey mom with a tattoo, I would have thought you're absolutely crazy. But it says no day but today. And I got this tattoo on January 1st, the year after Ben died. I thought this is going to be the first year I don't have him. And it's right there on my pulse. I just kind of feel that symbol, and I feel that love and encouragement. So the CEO said, "Oh, I noticed you have a tattoo." And already I'm like, oh gosh, like this is going south. He's like, "I'm just really interested. Everybody has a story." And I just had that moment where I caught my breath and I thought, oh, I'm not used to talking about it. I've been at home the last 6 months. This is my business. This is a big deal. Um, but I decided just very simply, I said, yeah, I said, this is a symbol for my son. We lost him 6 months ago. And the CEO just looked at me and he sat back down and just as calmly and compassionately as possible said, "I bet your life will never be the same." And I just took a breath and I said, "Yeah, I think you're right." And there was a silence. And I got up and walked away. And it was a 15-second exchange. But I am so moved by his ability not to get nervous, not to say, "Oh, sorry about that," and get me out of his office. He was present. He was compassionate. He didn't try to shove it under the rug. He didn't try to fix it. And the power of that moment will always stand out for me, both because of what he provided, but also for me that my story of success, being a consultant that could sit down with a CEO, and as a mother, the greatest tragedy could be the same story. I didn't have to be the consultant over here and the grieving mom over there. Now, it's not what I lead with, it's not the heart and soul of my business, but it also is a part of me. So I share that to offer you an encouragement as you author your own next chapter. You know, as you author what this next journey is going to be, that you really make sure that all parts are part of that. The hardships, the frustrating times, the losses, as well as your optimism, your hope, and the partnerships that you're developing.
Um, and first of all, I want to thank